St. Pat. Oh, hey, I'm the one who's got the beard. What's all this about? Anyway, here. St. Patty's Day kiss. I kissed my leprechaun. What did you do today?
Now, how do you change that?
I don't know.
Oh, we're live.
We are live.
This is Mark and Michelle, episode 2.
Liver than ever before. Oh, all right, here you go. Oh, okay, all right. Yeah,
See, I'm normal.
We're leprechaunless now, but
how about
I'm
that?
all right with that. That looks good.
Hearts, since we're talking about our relationship
We
today.
are talking, okay, let's do hearts. That'll be great. All right.
Distracting.
All right. Okay, anyway. Welcome to Mark and Michelle, episode 2, season 1. This is St. Patty's Day 2018, and we are going to be talking about how our relationship developed, how we were before the diet, how our relationship fared with me being autistic and her being DNT. Then we're going to talk about how our relationship changed because of the diets, the GAPS diet and the medical mediums diet. And then after that, we're going to talk about how our relationship is now. All very interesting because any of you listeners out there, watchers, who are married to people on the spectrum, this will be handy and informative for you. So anyway, we'll start with the first question, unless Michelle has something she wants to say.
Oh, well, we started out as an ASPE couple. ASPE, NT means neurotypical, which we didn't explain last time.
Sorry about that.
That's a person with a normal brain. Your face is gone, Mark.
Okay. Okay. It's back.
People have asked me why I didn't know something was wrong with him when I met him and after we'd been married for a while. And you're distracting me, Mark.
Oh, sorry. Trying to get this set up so we can see what's going on, but never mind.
Okay. I have seen my mother have a few of the traits that he's had. And so if I grew up like that, I didn't know anything was wrong.
Well, that's a good point, because if you grew up in an environment similar to that or like that, then nothing would be out of the ordinary for you.
Right. Mm-hmm. So what was your question?
The question is, how did we relate to each other when we were first married? Now, we were married in July of 1994, so we've been together, it'll be 24 years this year in July 22nd. So, when I first met her, I'll make a very brief version of our how we met. We were happened to be playing in an orchestra at the same church in Atlanta, Georgia. Anyway, she was playing trombone, I was playing cello. A mutual friend introduced us by saying, "Oh, we're pastors. You guys are pastors' kids." Well, we both kind of like, yeah, pastors'
whatever.
Kids. We know what that's like.
Yeah.
Whatever. Well, anyway.
Not interested.
Right? And she just didn't know how nice and sweet and caring I was, which I actually was. But we'll get to that in a second. Anyway, so a few weeks later, she needed a place to live. She called me, "Hey, can you talk to your landlady? Need a place to live." My cousin sold his house. Well, about a week later, she moved in, and we actually spent almost every minute we were together talking, learning about each other. And we did that for a week. Most of the time, we stayed up all night. Then she'd get up and go to work, and then I'd go to work in the evenings at the restaurant, and then I'd come back.
So
anyway,
I think we actually slept while the other one was at work.
Pretty much, or slept at work.
Right.
Which I've done that, even standing in front of a stove. But exactly, we had opposite schedules at that point. But we made sure we spent enough time together to know each other.
Yeah, and that ended up being like at 4 in the morning.
No, pretty much. Or, here you go, you'll like this. Later in that first week that we met, we had been up all night and the sun was coming up over the trees. And it was probably about 6:30. So we're talking, and I say, "Hey, will you marry me?" And she said, "Well, I already thought we discussed this."
I had thought we did, totally. I mean, I already knew I was marrying him. I didn't know what he was talking about.
Right? Well, I didn't know she had already thought about this. Now, oddly enough, this is the first time I've thought about this, that is kind of typical for an ASPE, non-ASPE, or, autistic, non-autistic couple. The person with autism needs verbal communication, but the
I
non-autistic...
had sent a lot of clues emotionally.
A lot of emotional clues.
That he didn't get. They bounced off and fell on the floor.
They hit my lead apron, okay, and got absorbed, just like x-rays. Anyway, so she looks at me and she goes, we already talked about this. I'm like, no, we haven't. She goes, well, yeah, I'll marry you. I was like, sweet.
So that was like 10 days after we met?
Yeah.
Yeah.
9 or 10 days. And then after that, we got married about a month and a half later at the end of July. And I won't go into the rest of the story. That's actually in the book. But you'll be able to read that when it gets published. But anyway, to move on from there, my point being is I needed verbal communication. She goes, we already talked about this. And I'm like, how? I didn't hear any words. So, to her, it was already a done deal. To me, I thought we were still negotiating the contract, but apparently not. So that's how we got engaged, and we weren't engaged very long.
Engaged. Whatever.
Well,
I wasn't into that stuff.
Well, apparently I wasn't either because I didn't care that...
He did get me a ring, though.
Well, I did, and got us rings. But
no, you got me an engagement ring.
Oh, that's right, I forgot. Yeah. See,
I never
it's
wear
been
it.
that long ago. Well, anyway... but she's still... You wearing your wedding ring now?
I don't wear my rings ever.
See, look who's the committed partner? No, not really. But anyway, so after we got married, we moved in together, and that's when even I started noticing things. So they must have been fairly extreme. And she'd come home from work. She worked in the morning. I'd work in the evenings. And I actually think I switched to morning shift. So we were both working morning shifts at this point. She was working at the music store. I was working as a cook in the morning at a restaurant. So we get home, and as soon as she came in the door, I'd be right there going, oh, how's your day? How are you? Well, that caused her to freeze up. Well, we hadn't learned how to communicate well enough between the two of us yet. Well, I'll just say we hadn't at all. And so she would go off, and she would have to process her day and be quiet. And
I'm a very processy person.
Yes. Well, see, now I understand that because now I have to process what seems to be the same way. And I'm fine with that. So I would follow her around the house, poking her in the arm, saying, here, talk to me. Come on, talk to me. Talk to me. Numerous times, she would wind up going to the bathroom, locking herself in, and I'd be banging on the door, come out and talk,
He was poking me in the arm.
Yeah, I don't think you got any bruises, but...
No.
But anyway, so I've got no proof. But anyway, that is how...
He did hit a wall once and knock a hole in it.
That's true, I did. And
that was when we first got married, right?
That was.
That was Misty Creek?
That was Misty Creek. And so, for her, that was just too much to handle.
Yeah.
See, I didn't know that I was doing... My communication style was shutting her down. And so, for her, she just had to retreat until she could regroup. And then she'd come back and we could actually talk. But I didn't realize how much I was shutting her down by being my aggressive verbal self.
Well, you didn't even know you were being aggressively verbal.
Exactly. I didn't know that. I just thought that was the way everybody did things. Mm-hmm. So, and that's a little bit of mind blindness there. Anyway, so when we first got married, I was needing words. She was just giving off emotion because she thought I could pick up nonverbal cues, body language, that kind of thing, tone of voice. I didn't get any of that. But that's also normal for autism. I think a lot of you folks out there with kids who are on the spectrum see that every day. But even with an adult, that still stays with you. It doesn't go away. Well, unless you, of course, you find a way out of your autism. So,
Mark tried.
Yeah, I tried to communicate.
He tried everything to be okay autistic.
Yes, that's true. And we worked really hard. And I've heard of others who worked really hard as well. But anyway, that's how we were when we were first married. Well, the second question. we need to talk about the diets that we've done.
Let's talk about this first.
Oh, all right.
See, your question is going beyond where we are.
Okay.
In the book, I've written about how I was feeling in the beginning of our marriage, how to deal with if you just saw our setup here, you would just die laughing.
It's super high tech.
Now you can't see us, right?
Right.
Mark was talking about coming home with the rants about not being able to get along with people at work and them being mean to him, and I just didn't understand why he couldn't get along with people. And he would come home and rant and rant and rant and rant, and it really wore me down. Discuss your rants.
The rants.
Ragey rants.
Yes, they were ragey rants. While I didn't hurt anybody or anything, well, I should say
physically.
not physically, right? Not physically. I did hurt a lot of emotions, and so the rants were just absolute frustration in why people treated me not with contempt, but they dismiss me a lot of times. And I think a lot of adults with autism know exactly what that's like, and it makes them feel stupid. It made me feel stupid, and I never could understand why people did that. It was people wouldn't listen to me. They didn't seem to take me seriously. And a lot of times they wouldn't work with me, and in some cases, many people were actually scared of me. And I think a lot of autistic adults know what that's like. And while they may not be able to put it into words so much, I can say that the reason I had such trouble is because I didn't know how to communicate in a way that made the other person I was communicating with feel at ease. I was very assertive, bordering on aggressive at times.
I would see him go into a store, and he would be talking to the person, and I didn't have any of the audio. I'd just be seeing him, and he looked like he was on crack. Just
gesticulating everywhere.
Yeah.
Looked like.
I was like, you look like a madman.
Yeah, well, yeah, that's what she said. I didn't know that until after. I don't think I knew that until after we started the diet.
Maybe.
Of course, it wouldn't have mattered before I started the diet. I still wouldn't have understood it. But anyway, so the rages were just absolute frustration, and my way of getting it out was by talking and pacing back and forth on the floor, and basically just that same gesticulation that I talked about was present in all those rants. So I looked crazy, and oddly enough, I felt crazy, even though I didn't realize that until later. But that's how it was, and it was that way just about every day I came home from work.
All right, so in the book I have written this paragraph. His rages became too difficult for me to manage as they affected my health and peace of mind. I wanted to make my life work, but I was also trying to make his life work. I was being a mother, translator, mediator, psychologist, anthropologist, and job coach, all while unknowingly being thrown into a foreign culture with a foreign language. Every moment of my life felt like survival mode, but he felt that way too. He never experienced rest from fight or flight functionality, none, except when he was asleep, and many times I held my breath until he was. Then I would remember I loved him.
So, I don't know how many couples there are out there who are watching us who are married to people on the spectrum, but you all, both of you might, or all of you, might relate to this.
Well, I imagine some mothers can relate to that.
Oh, well, good point. I hadn't thought of that. We're not parents ourselves, but I imagine that a lot of mothers can relate to that very thing. And their only respite from the autism is when their children are asleep. That's not an insult. That's just how things are for people. And if it happens to adults, it must happen to kids. So, anyway, but that was... Do you want to move on to the next question?
Sure.
Okay.
If anyone's asking any questions, we're not seeing them today. I don't know why.
Let's see if this is Okay.
Okay.
Okay, all right. Now we can
Looks
see
like
any
no
questions. Not yet.
Okay. All right, Mark, what diets did you use to recover?
All right. Diets. I got my diagnosis of Asperger's syndrome and obsessive compulsive personality disorder in June of 2012. A year later, in July of 2013, Michelle came to me and said she had heard about a diet called the GAPS diet.
Which I believe we talked about in the last episode.
We may have, and we probably talked about how she learned about it on an Oprah episode, which she never watches TV.
Right, we talked
ever.
about that.
Right,
so you
we
can
talked
watch
about
episode 1.
Exactly. To get that backstory, even though I've told most of it. But anyway, we learned about the GAPS diet, and we talked about it. There's a site online called www.gapsdiet.com, and that will tell you just about everything you need to know about the diet. But we bought a book that goes with it. The book, I should say, was written by the doctor who designed the diet. And so after having almost all of a biology degree, I'm short like 3 classes, and then an anthropology degree, I did a lot of reading of scientific articles. And all the science that I took in the biology degree, the science behind the GAPS diet is basic and excellent. So I think it's sound. And so reading through that and then reading through Dr. Campbell McBride's reasons for why the gut doesn't work correctly, I agree with it all. So we just...
Well, Mark agrees with it all.
Okay.
Now that we've done this, found this new diet, I'm agreeing more with it than the GAPS diet.
Mm-hmm.
And now we're going to discuss how each diet has changed our relationship.
Okay, well...
So the GAPS diet actually did a lot.
Okay. I wasn't quite finished with the GAPS diet. So we decided to jump in wholeheartedly. Apparently, we're a little off the deep end.
Yeah.
We did it all hardcore. Nothing but broth, garlic, and meat for about a year and a half. So we really jumped in with both feet, and having a culinary background as well, making soups, sauces, and things like that for big restaurants, the cooking wasn't an issue for me either. But as far as how it changed our relationship, let me launch into that. 6 weeks after we started the diet, my wife and I think I told this in the last episode as well, we were at my sister's daughter's birthday party. And while we were there, I happened to be looking at Michelle. Michelle saw me looking at her, and she goes, look, he's throwing emotion at me. She was telling my mom that. Well, that was the first time that I noticed that that I found there to be any change. And so that's when it started for us. That was 6 weeks in. But over the next few months, things started happening. For instance, in October and November, my brain had changed so much that in one sentence I would refer to myself as an Aspie. In the next sentence, I would refer to myself as an NT.
That was weird.
That wasn't planned. It occurred naturally, organically. It just happened. Mm-hmm. And I thought that was bizarre. After a few more weeks, my referring to myself as an Aspie disappeared. I just referred to myself pretty much as an NT there. From then on, there were times when I had regressions on the diet when I would refer to myself as an Aspie again, but I always came out of those regressions and got back to the more NT side of things. So as far as that goes, that's how it started to change. But then in late 2014, well, the middle of 2014 and then in 2015, I noticed things actually changing between us. There would be times when I would have an opening up of more emotional sensitivity. When that happened, we would get in arguments every time.
And they were big.
They were big arguments. And 2014 was one of the biggest arguments we had ever had. And I don't exactly remember what it was, but I had sensed something small in her that I had never noticed before, even though at that time I didn't realize it. Well, that caused us to get into a big argument. Well, we have always been okay with each other. We are able to let things go. Mm-hmm. We are very persevering people, so we've just kept going. But every time an uptick in emotional sensitivity would occur, we would get in an argument. And then it might take us a few days to go, oh, you know what?
You just got another
uptick in emotional sensitivities.
Right.
And that just happened and happened and happened. More things opened up. And more emotional sensitivities. And so the first time, and it's probably been about 3 years now, that we were actually able to look at each other and know what each other was thinking, was probably about 1.5 years into the diet. And that was bizarre, because when I was autistic, I don't ever remember being able to do that with her. But now we can still do that. We don't see each other enough to do that. but I can do that now. And I know what she's thinking, because I can see
What am I thinking right now?
I don't know what you're thinking right now.
See, he just lied.
See, that was too contrived. Shut up. And but anyway, so it was always an increase in emotional sensitivity, and those happened for the first 2 years. So from 2013 till about October 2015, and things, the emotional sensitivities increased, and I kind of plateaued on the diet about early 2016, and I didn't really see any major changes from about March or April of 2016, really until the time we started doing the medical mediums detox diet in January of this year. Which, if you want to talk about that, you can.
I'm not sure, because I thought we were still doing the relationship.
Well, we're talking about the diets part. No, we started on the diets.
Okay, we started on the diets, apparently. Okay, so we started the medical medium diet, which is a detox of the liver and also a detox of heavy metals. And within a week, I think we said this last week, but within a week, Mark was starting his emotional intent started to be congruent with his speech.
Mm-hmm. Right. So, in other words, my verbal intent and my emotional intent aligned for the first time.
Right.
And
that did not happen on the GAPS diet. And I don't think it was going to. I also think that his liver got stagnant, and that's why he quit having gains on the GAPS diet.
Mm-hmm. Now, and that's important in the medical medium diet, because if your liver has become overburdened with processing toxins out of your body, the medical medium says that you basically just stagnate and you stop seeing any gains in weight loss and detoxification and that kind of thing.
You start seeing weight gain. You start seeing adrenal issues.
True. Right.
And then whatever undiagnosed viruses and antibiotic resistant bacteria.
Bacteria, right. Mm-hmm.
I lost my train of thought. Help me out here.
Well, you were talking about the diet, talking about medical medium diet. Now, what the medical medium diets consist of, mainly, at least the detox part, is a 28-day stretch of almost entirely...
There are actually 3 different diets.
Okay, well, you talk about that since you know.
We did the 28-day detox diet, where it's mostly raw. It's all raw, and
fruit and
veggies, and it was pretty hard, actually. I felt like I was outside of my body for a month and a half. I don't think Mark had that same experience.
No, I didn't have that same experience. It was a little jolting, because you have to eat every hour and a half to 2 hours. And so that's unusual. And everything is sweet. And while I like sweet things, I've kind of been cured of sweet things now, because the first 28 days was solid fruit smoothies and dates, that type of thing, ripe bananas. And you have one of those 1.5 to 2 hours all day. And while that's good, it definitely helps clean you out. So mainly, that's what the medical mediums detox diet is.
So the relationship took off.
Yeah,
it was really wow.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Do you want to talk about changes?
Sure, go ahead.
Okay. Well, do you want to talk?
My personal changes were different, because I had trouble with the GAPS diet. It made me sicker. It healed some stuff, like I had fewer migraines. I had irritable bowel syndrome went away. But I had something crop up that seemed like it was histamine issues. And I couldn't eat anything. I couldn't eat fruit, hardly any veggies. I felt really bad a lot. fatigue. I think I was heading towards fibromyalgia or chronic fatigue, and when I went on the medical medium diet, I started feeling better in like 2 days.
In 2 days, yeah.
Mm-hmm. That's why, I think the GAPS took Mark a long way, but it was not going to be the end-all be-all.
No, in fact, I thought it would be. But after doing the medical medium's detox diet, that's really made a change. And I know we've talked about these changes before, but there may be new people. So I'll make a quick note of the changes I went through. Well, my communication abilities really became more precise. And that being the case, I see people interact with me better now. Not only that, getting the right amount of glucose to your brain from the fruit and veggies, you are in a much better mood.
Oh man, it's hard to be in a bad mood when you're eating fruit.
Yeah, it is. Yeah,
it was life-changing because I had anxiety, borderline, severe.
Exactly. And I had all those. I had anxiety as well.
Notice I'm saying had.
Had, right? Exactly. Verb tense is important.
It started January 2nd of, we better say the year 2018.
2018.
And this is
about 2.5 months
right?
in.
So I'm already saying had anxiety.
Right.
It's a miracle.
Well, and this all being food-based, we don't recommend, we don't advise anybody, we're not doctors. We're just sharing our experiences here because you might learn something from them, you might get something out of it too. So since that's the case, keep on listening. The medical medium diet has really worked, has cleared up the things for us that the GAPS diet did not. The GAPS took us a long way. I am more than grateful for it. If I ever meet Dr. Campbell McBride, she will get a hug from me.
Right.
Because it did save my life. Now,
but if your kid is stagnated or has histamine issues like I did, go for the medical medium diet.
Give it just read about it, learn about it. Don't take our word for it. Research everything yourself. And if you have questions, you can ask us. So, but the medical medium's detox diet cleared up a lot of things for me. But it put me in a better mood, which my recovery during GAPS brought out a very severe part of my personality that I didn't realize existed. Well, that made it hard on people that I worked with, hard on Michelle sometimes.
It was still easier than him being autistic.
Well, that's true. It was easy. I'll agree. It was even easier for me than being autistic. So, all of that said, it eliminated my anxiety. So you just have to constantly keep up your blood sugar level while you do it. So anyway, those are the two diets. The next question is, we've already talked about the next question, actually. On the GAPS diet, how did our relationship change? Well, let me give you a few more things. I noticed that during recovery on GAPS, I started having a real strong desire to know more about her, to connect on a deeper level than I had ever had before. And so there were a good handful of times from about end of 2015 to 2016 when I said, look, we need more time together. We need to spend as much time as we can and together. I really, really want to know more about you because I really, really like you. Well, our schedules didn't really mesh in that way. And
hold.
Oh, go ahead.
I remember when we first started the GAPS, I was really scared. What if he came out of it and decided he didn't like me? That was a big fear.
That was a big, yeah.
Yeah.
It's funny. I never thought that way. I didn't see any reason why I wouldn't still like her. But I'll say now that I like her, but I love her too.
Oh.
So, but that was a big thing that came out for me. I actually wanted to have a strong relationship with her. It was absolutely necessary for me. And that has developed on its own without me having to sit down and say we need to spend more time together. Because as my emotional sensitivities increased and expanded, I was able to pick up on a lot of the things that I was missing when I asked to spend more time together. So in other words, telling that you liked me, knowing when you love me, knowing when you didn't want to be hugged, or
Well, I had to learn to say all that stuff because it was not a thing.
well,
when
you
he was
had to learn
autistic.
to say it when I was autistic. Is that what you
No,
mean?
saying I loved you when you were autistic didn't really go anywhere. It was
Well, it just felt flat.
kind of pointless.
Right.
So I had to learn to talk emotionally with him.
Oh, that's true. In other words, she had to turn her emotional side back on.
Yeah, and that was an issue.
Yeah, it was, because it got me mad. Because I'd see emotion and I didn't know the correct response for it. I'd see emotion from her, didn't know the correct response, and I would get mad. But then she's like, but this is how I was before I met you. This is how I was before I knew you were autistic. This is me. And I thought, okay, I'm going to have to learn how to deal with this. And so I did. But it's helped because now I see who she is. Now I can see all the things that she had to hide. She actually had to learn to come back to life herself.
Yes.
Because she had to shut down
I had to shut
completely
down.
when I was autistic.
Yes.
Not her fault, not my fault. It's just what is.
Yes.
So, not the autism's fault. It's just what is. So, anyway,
I think
right.
we're at like 32 minutes.
Are we
so-
32 minutes? Well,
Yeah.
we can cut that off and discuss the rest of the stuff
We
here.
can do something later.
Yeah. Well, we actually looks like we
Got it all.
We got it all. So, but are there any questions from you guys?
I don't see any.
Don't see any questions. If there's any questions later, just post them on Heal Your Autism here on Facebook.
Okay.
And we'll answer them for you. Talk to you later.
Bye.
Bye. Yeah, that was good.